Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Dr. Malqueen Richardson, Director of Educational Support Services at Benedict College.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the campus of Benedict College. We are the 2019 HBCU of the Year. We welcome you on behalf of Benedict College's President and CEO, Dr. Rosalind Clark Artis, and the Benedict College family. Dr. Artis sends her regrets that she's unable to speak with you personally today. In the absence of Dr. Artis, my name is Malqueen Richardson, and I have the pleasure to welcome you to Benedict College for the Kamala Harris Black Women's Town Hall. Just a few highlights about Benedict College. At Benedict College, we are 2,000 students strong, and our students are preparing for an array of leadership roles. We have improvements in our academic support programs. We are recognized for our award-winning service learning program. Our Benedict College alumni for the past 5 years gave more than $1 million each year to the college. Our faculty and staff are actively engaged in research. They publish articles and books, and they present at national conferences. Our president, Dr. Artis, is making history for her many achievements. Most importantly, Benedict College is a leader for 150 years in South Carolina. And together, we continue to be a power for good in the state, in America, and globally. We're glad you came to Benedict College. And again, on behalf of Dr. Artis and the Benedict College family, welcome to Benedict College, the 2019 HBCU of the Year. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Keshana Polanco, Field Organizer.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Keshana Polanco. I am a field organizer for Lexington County with Kamala Harris for the people. I want to congratulate Benedict College on being HBCU of the Year. I am so proud to have gone here. I love each and every one of you. I was raised in Lexington County to a strong Black woman and a proud father who came here as a child from the Dominican Republic. My father, to this very day, is fighting for his right to citizenship in America. So I know all too well the effects of having the immigration system be broken in this country. But why does it take so long for immigrants to receive citizenship here? As a child, I also know all too well the effects of sexual assault on your mental health. Not knowing that years later, as a thriving student at this very university, I would have an incident that would trigger a fatal depression. Excuse me, I'm sorry. It would trigger a depression so deep in me that I ended up dropping out because I couldn't afford to get the help that I needed. So why is it that mental health is not fully covered under our current healthcare system. Also, as a student here, I got to do research on prison reform in South Carolina. And I discussed a school-to-prison pipeline. Now, I ended up moving to California a few years later, and I realized that Kamala Harris was actively and progressively clearing out a rape kit backlog that no one had touched previously. She was also implementing plans, implementing a Back on Track program that basically targeted young people from that same school-to-prison pipeline. So I'm asking, why is it that there is more money in our prison systems right now than it is in our education systems? These are the questions that people, everyday people, like you and I ask all the time. But there is one person with a proven track record of fighting all of these issues from day one, and that is Senator Kamala Harris. Senator Harris, she fights for an easier pathway to citizenship. She fights for women's rights. She fights for mental health to be on the ballot. She fights to end mass incarceration, which would basically stop that school-to-prison pipeline that we were talking about. So I'm asking, before you leave this room today, I am charging each and every last one of you with a task. Join us in our fight. Volunteer. Go knock those doors. Go call those people. Because on February 29th, Kamala Harris is going to be continuing our fight for the issues that matter to us and for us. So, I'm from a Southern Baptist church. Just real quick, I'm gonna ask y'all to do something for me. So when I say something, just repeat after me. I want you to look at your neighbor and say, neighbor. I'm grabbing my cell phone right now, neighbor. Go ahead, y'all can get them out. Y'all can go ahead. Say, neighbor, I am texting SC to 707 85. I'm texting SC to 707 85. Let's continue to fight for the people.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage your panelists for the evening. South Carolina Campaign Chair, Melissa Watson. Actress and activist, Sheryl Ralph. Congresswoman, Brenda Lawrence. And President and CEO of Higher Heights for America, Glynda Carr. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Trav Robertson, Chair of the South Carolina Democratic Party, and Lessie Price, First Vice Chair of the South Carolina Democratic Party.
Hello, everyone. Hello. That was kind of mild. Hello, everyone. Hello. What a great-looking group in the audience. And as I look around, what comes to mind first is girl power. Women with power. Come on. Black women with power. Absolutely. We are delighted to be with you this evening and to see all of the many faces around this room. And I don't want to leave out the men as well, but this is about women and black women. So we're delighted to see you this evening. I want to introduce our first vice chair, who will introduce Dr. Thompson here to the podium and to the mic. His name is Trav Robertson, and you could not find a more supportive chair of the state party and women and black women as Trav Robertson. Let's have it for Trav Robertson.
Good evening. In my role as chair, I keep the statistics in my head. Last year, we had 1,72,000 people vote in this state. Of that 1.7 million, we were 46,000 votes shy of having 1 million women cast ballots. 200,000 more women than men voted last year. We also saw an increase in non-white vote by 31.3% over 2014. So 65% of the electorate, 1.1 to 1.2 million, were women and or people of color. We're going to hit a milestone in the next several months, and part of that will be this campaign. We are 7,762 registered voters shy of having 1 million non-white people of color registered in this state. That's a significant milestone. But my official capacity, along with Dr. Thompson and Lessie Price, tonight is to accept some paperwork and introduce Senator Harris to the stage. I believe that's correct. We're going to take the paperwork. Official.
Greetings, everyone. So I'm so happy to see everyone. We're going to have a wonderful evening together. But you saw me just hand that folder to the chairman, along with the Madam Vice Chair. and the leadership of the South Carolina Democratic Party. And what I handed him are my official papers to run in the state of South Carolina.
Congratulations. This is a historic moment.
Thank you. Thank you. So it's official. So I'm so thrilled and honored to see everyone here this evening. And the weekend before Thanksgiving, I know so many of us have many other things we should be doing with this time right now. But I want to thank you. I want to thank you. And I'm so looking forward to our discussion. You know, we and this incredible panel of national leaders wanted to convene here in South Carolina, in Columbia, to talk about what is obviously a national issue. But talking about it here in Columbia has for so many of us a special meaning, because South Carolina has always produced incredible leadership and black women as national leaders on so many of the biggest issues that face our country, that not only face us, but face everybody. What South Carolina knows is that when we are active, when we use and exercise the power of our voice, when we demand to be seen and heard, the work that we end up doing and producing lifts not only us and our families and our neighborhoods, all of society and America benefits. That is the reality of it. And the reality of it, as you all heard me talk about on the debate stage, is also that we need to also speak truth and engage in real talk. And no matter if it makes people uncomfortable, but truth needs to be spoken. Which is that, you know, folks liked and candidates like, and often the Democratic Party will rightly praise black women for all of the leadership that is provided around elections. I mean, here in South Carolina, I've got the numbers. In 2016, in the South Carolina primary, black voters were 63% of those that turned out. Black women were 41% of the total. All right? So my point when I think and talk about this, and it's what encouraged me to speak that way when I spoke on the debate stage a couple days ago in Atlanta, is when we talk then about rightly praising black women and the leadership that folks take on, because we know that our families and our communities require it of us, and because we have never been the type to sit down and wait for others to give us permission to tell us what is possible. We don't do that. We tell people what is possible. We show them what is possible. We are deep of faith. We have the ability to believe and see those things that others might not see. We have the ability to know what can be unburdened by what has been. And so we act. And we make things happen. But the reality, and here's the real talk, is also that we know that we don't want to sit back and just be flattered. You know, my mother would say that all the time. She'd say, don't you ever let anybody just flatter you. She was tough. Right? Don't just thank me. Show me your thanks. Right? Don't just thank me for helping you. Show me that you see me. And by that, of course, I don't mean me. I mean us. I mean everybody that we are here to talk about. Because the reality is when we talk about black girl magic, yes, but here's the thing, though. We know it is something special. We know it is something that there really are not enough words to describe. It is something you can see. Sometimes it's just something you feel. Sometimes it's just something you sense. But here's the thing. The truth of it is that magic is born out of hard work. It didn't just magically appear. It didn't just magically appear. Nobody just sprinkled it on us. It's because of the work we put in. Let's be clear about that. Let everybody be clear about that. And so that's why on that debate stage I talked about the fact that, all right, Yes, thank black women, but then let's talk about the fact that in America today, black women are 3 to 4 times more likely to die in connection with childbirth. Let's talk about the fact that a black woman, when she gives birth to that son, from the first time she holds him in her hands, she looks at that precious body with joy, with love, and with fear, knowing how precarious and fragile that body is. Let's talk about the fact that in America, it is a tragedy that women make only 80 cents on the dollar, but black women are making 61 cents on the dollar. And we could go on and on down the list, talking about the fact that when we talk about what we need, what we want, and who we are in terms of leadership, there is incredible work that is happening, and there is so much work to be done. And so that is the point of this conversation this evening, and I thank you all for your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Harris. Hello, everyone. Thank you, you magical men, you. I am Sheryl Ralph. Thank you very much. And I want to welcome all of you to this wonderful Black Women's Weekend of Action. What I love about us so much is, you see, it's a Black Women's Weekend of Action, but we pulled a very diverse crowd of people. So thank you to the people who love us and appreciate us and sharing this weekend with us. Now, I want you to know right off the bat, I'm out early. I'm out early for Senator Kamala Harris. Okay? And let me tell you plainly, that's a woman right there. I've been around a lot of strong women my whole life, and they have run things from family to church to communities to you name it, they have run it, and they have run it well. So if there are those of you who are sitting here or are watching us on the internet, there is nothing wrong with voting for a WOMAN. Nothing wrong with it. A woman birthed you. That should give you reason enough to vote. And we do not care this weekend if you are white, black, red, yellow, any mixed colors, but we want you to vote like a black woman. That's what we want. That's what we need of you. And we've got some wonderful women up here on this stage, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves to you so that you might know who and more about the people you are looking at. Please.
Is this on? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I can't follow that, obviously. I mean, what else do you need? You have Sheryl Ralph here.
Thank you. You need the senator. Yes.
I'm not done now. I'm not done.
Okay.
So I'm from South Carolina, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about myself. I am a co-chair of the campaign, but
Yes.
There are two things I want to announce right now. I just got a text from my undecided voter, my daughter, and she said she will be joining me tomorrow to meet Senator Kamala Harris.
There you go.
She wants to be a future judge, so she's been around the campaign scene since she's been about 5 or 6, and her strategy was she was going to avoid primaries so they couldn't check her records when they did vetting for her judgeship. She was just going to vote in the general. I mean, she's been around. But she said tomorrow, Senator Harris is worth it. So
yes.
So I can go home to glory. My work is done. And the other thing I want to say is in November when we elect Senator Harris, the first woman female African American, Asian American president of the United States. In November, we're also going to say adios to Lindsey Graham and send Jamie Harris.
Hey!
And send Jamie Harris to Congress as well. So thank you, Bree Maxwell, for representing Jamie Harris's campaign.
Yes.
Jamie is a dear friend of mine. He's been around. You know, he used to lead our party, but he understands the importance of women and the importance of women vote. So let's also send Jamie to the Senate and send Lindsey packing.
All right. Higher Heights. Tell us about Black women leading and what you've done.
I was sitting back. I was like, good evening, South Carolina. I'm Glynda Carr. I'm a co-founder and president of Higher Heights for America. And Higher Heights for America PAC is so excited to stand with Senator Harris on this journey to the White House.
Yes.
We proudly stood with her for her bid for the U.S. Senate. You know, she did correct a record on Thursday. She is the second Black woman to hold that seat.
Ah.
Higher Heights is the political home for Black women. We help women from the voting booth to elected office. So if you don't think you're a member or you think you're an expired member, go to higherheightsforamerica.org because we have work to do because the road to 2020 is powered by Black women. And I'm so excited about gathering this conversation. In the week of Thanksgiving, we give thanks for you. I know y'all got something on the stove or in the oven. But to take the time out because for us to move this democracy to higher heights, we need engagement for Black women and all those that are in this town hall tonight. So I look forward to the conversation.
Yes. In Congress, we have some outstanding leaders, and one of them has joined us here today. She is not just a politician. She is a public servant, and she works 24/7 every day. Congresswoman Brenda Lawrence.
South Carolina, I'm glad to be here. How are you all doing? I want you to know that I am Brenda Lawrence and I represent Detroit, Michigan, the Michigan 14th District. And I am so honored to be here today to stand up and to fight and to really energize you on what an important opportunity we have. I'm a member of Congress. I am the chair of the Congressional Women's Caucus. I am the chair of the Democratic Women's Caucus. I'm on the executive board of the Black Caucus. And so when we sit here today and talk about issues that impact women and African Americans, I sit in a seat where I'm uniquely aware of the challenges that we have in this country. And I'm here today, early out, being advised to keep my powder dry. That's the term they use. My powder cannot be dry because the need and the urgency is too great. This is about, yes, we want South Carolina, but this is about our country. This is about putting a person in the White House that has the sensitivity, the compassion, the intelligence, the experience to stand up and fight for this country, to fight for justice for this country. And I can't tell you how excited I am. I'm here today, the little Black girl from the east side of Detroit, and we have a thing we say, east side? From the east side of Detroit, raised by my grandparents, what a blessing that was, to be able to go to college, one of the first in my family. Didn't know how poor I was because I was loved, and we had a hot meal. Sometimes it was only beans and cornbread. Some of y'all can relate, but it was homemade cornbread and homemade biscuits that she prepared. Having that strength of being a black woman in America, being the first black woman elected as a mayor of the city, and to be able to stand where we're trying to put a black woman in the first time in a seat. We're not scared, we're not confused, we're very clear that she is the woman for the job. God bless.
Yes. Yes. Now, you all heard the senator herself say that we are here for some real talk. So we want to really, really get to some of the issues that we've been hearing. You know, a lot of us have been on the phone. We've been talking to people. We are saying her name out loud. Now, Senator, there are some people out there who say, Kamala Harris, I don't know. I don't know if I can trust her. Okay. I know I can trust you. I know that I could put my vote on you, woman, whatever, to run this country and run it much better than it is being run now. Tell us clearly, tell that person out there who's saying, I don't know if I can trust her. What's their problem? What do they need to know?
Well, here's the thing. There's a lot to unpack there. One is that in this campaign, the top polling people have been on the stage for decades, at least 3 of them. So they're well known. I'm introducing myself. We're still introducing ourselves.
Yes.
And so there are aspects of the work that we have done that we are sharing with people, but they don't know.
Right.
And so part of the response to that is you need to know her record, because when you look at my record, it is a record of actually having worked on almost any and every issue we can discuss. Because
Yes.
mine is a career of actually getting things done, not a career of lovely speeches or trying to file some bill in Congress that goes nowhere, or giving a lecture in a classroom, or writing a paper about it. Mine is a career of actually working on issues and getting them done. Real talk. And so mine is a career of actually having worked on issues that affect women and children. My entire career, when I was elected the Attorney General of the state of California as the first woman, the first person of color in a state of 40 million people, to run the second largest Department of Justice in the United States, second only to the United States Department of Justice. And believe you me, nobody thought I could win. In fact, on election night, my opponent declared his victory. But I'm here to talk about it.
That's right.
And I did the work of creating a whole area of focus on children. The Bureau of Children's Justice had never existed, to focus in particular on poor children and children of color who were not getting the benefit of the bargain around education, around issues like our boys, in particular, our youngest children, who were being disproportionately put on suspension, who were being expelled. I mean, elementary school children. Right. And I sued about things like that. I took on the 5 big banks of the United States when they were engaged in predatory lending practices. You all remember that? Where they were telling folks, oh, you don't need to put anything down. That house is almost free. And targeting our community as well as others with predatory lending practices, which caused a foreclosure crisis that disproportionately impacted communities of color. And I took on the big banks. They were offering $2 to $4 billion, and I said, nope, that's not good enough. We fight. People told me that would be the end of my career. You're taking on the big banks, you'll never win. But during that fight, they would send out letters to other states saying, if Kamala Harris is in this deal, this is what you'll get. If she's not in this deal, this is what you won't get. Extraordinary things. But we fought and we stood our ground, and I brought back $20 billion to the homeowners of my state.
Yes.
I did the work of creating one of the first in the nation requirements that police officers would be trained on racial bias.
Yes.
The first state law enforcement agency that was required by my direction to wear body cameras and keep them on full time.
On.
This is my on.
Right.
As opposed to in some places where they turn them off.
Off.
Mine is a career of having worked on issues that are leadership roles in the United States Senate around saying that black maternal mortality is something that should be a source of concern because it is a crisis. When black women are 3 to 4 times more likely to die in connection with childbirth, and when you scratch the surface not very deeply, you see it has nothing to do with that woman's educational level. It has nothing to do with her socioeconomic level. It literally has everything to do with the fact she is black.
Yes.
And so when she walks in a hospital or a doctor's office or a clinic and describes what she is experiencing, she is not being taken seriously. I have been a leader in the United States Senate on saying we need to get rid of the cash bail system. Why? Because people who are charged with a crime and don't have the money to pay the bail are sitting in jail for days, weeks, months, sometimes years.
That's right.
Simply because they don't have the money, whereas people who do have the money are walking free. And so this is a matter not only of criminal justice, it's also economic justice.
Yes.
I did the work of years and years ago. Young girls in particular were being arrested called teenage prostitutes. And I said, hold up. So many of them have come from foster care. They are runaways. They have experienced such awful abuse and neglect. Why are we criminalizing them? And I created a whole model around saying they should not be arrested and put in juvenile hall. We will create a safe house, which we did.
Yes.
And said that they are actually being bought and sold. And this is a form of modern day slavery, and I will not stand for it.
Yes.
These are some of the many things I have done.
So to that person who is out there saying, I don't know if I can trust her, you can trust her because she has been doing the work. She has been doing the heavy lifting. She has been there for you, whether you know it or not. Another part of real talk. There are a lot of people out there, well, I just don't know about her. I think she's out to lock up black men. You know, that's what she does. Please speak to that.
So, look, my sister Maya's here. She and I were raised by parents who were active in the civil rights movement in the 1960s. We joke we grew up surrounded by a bunch of adults who spent full time marching and shouting for justice. Among my heroes were Thurgood Marshall and Charles Hamilton Houston and Constance Baker Motley, the lawyers, right, who understood how to bring justice to the community in the courtrooms as a way of translating the passion from the streets to actually change the rules. So I decided I wanted to be a lawyer. I went to Howard University. I went to law school after that. And my mother and family gathered around and said, okay, Kamala, what are you going to do in your fight for justice? And I said, I've decided I'm going to be a prosecutor. Now, you know they thought that was at least a curious decision, and some of them were like, why? Why, you know, your sister's going to go and run the ACLU. Everybody else, you know, is a criminal defense attorney or public defender. Why are you going to do that? And I said, you know, when we want to change and reform systems, we should also be on the inside where the decisions are being made as a way to make change. And so, you know what, Sheryl, I decided to go up the rough side of the mountain.
Yes.
I do realize that. I do realize that. I also do realize and fully appreciate, which is why I made the choice, which was a conscious choice. I grew up. I didn't have to read about it or learn about it. There's not a black man I know, be he a relative or a friend, who has not experienced some kind of injustice at the hands of law enforcement.
That's right.
Not a one. So I knew what I was doing. It was a conscious decision. And I decided to do it so that when I was elected as the first black woman to be elected district attorney in a state of 40 million people, when I was the San Francisco district attorney, that I created one of the first in the nation programs around young men and women who had been arrested for drugs and saying, no, they are not going to jail. We are getting them jobs and dismissing the charges against them. And it ended up being a national model for what's called reentry, which when I was doing it, DAs would say, what are you talking about? We've never heard this word reentry. People would say to me, what are you doing? You're supposed to be locking people up, not letting them out. People say, why are you giving them jobs? Other people want jobs. But it ended up being a model, so much so that the Eric Holder Justice Administration under President Obama named my work as a model of innovation for the nation.
Yes.
But that being said, the reaction people are having to me having been a prosecutor come from the same place for my decision to become a prosecutor. So I appreciate that, which is a learned experience of not trusting a system that has been informed by racism, by bias, and has, in many ways, in a system that is supposed to fight for justice, created great injustices. So I appreciate the place and the spirit and the lived experience that informs people's perspective on this. But I'm also aware that, you know, there's this whole meme, oh, is Kamala a cop, is Kamala a cop, as a way to also basically try and have people who, if they knew the record, would support, but as trying to turn a strength into a weakness.
That's right.
And being manipulated by a lot of people who do not want to see me elected. And I do know that too. I know that.
Yes.
And so what we have to do is say, look, first of all, there's another piece of this too, which is that prosecutors have an incredible amount of power. All right, so do we want that the people who are making, they're not going away, okay? So that, let's start there. They're not going away. So don't we want that the people who are making the decision are also the people who attend our church, whose children play with our children, who live in our neighborhoods, who know our community, who come from our community? Don't we want that? Are we saying that we should not be prosecutors? We can't be saying that.
That's right.
And then the second part, frankly, has to do with a certain myth that some people will push to suggest that we are a community that don't think that, you know, if a child is molested, if a woman is raped, if one human being kills another human being, that there should be consequence. Well, come on now. We all agree. If those things happen, there should be consequence and accountability. And we want to know that everybody in the system is given dignity. When I was a prosecutor, when I was the DA, let me tell you, it was often the case that a mother would come to the front window of my office and say to the receptionist, I want to talk to Kamala. I only want to talk to Kamala. And she'd come back and get me and say, there's another mother here. And I'd go get the mother and bring her to my office and sit on the couch, and she'd start crying. And she'd say, no one is taking seriously the fact that my baby has been killed. Her adult son. They're not taking my grief seriously. Maybe if my child had died because of a car accident or cancer, somebody would understand a mother's grief. Why are they treating me like I should have expected this, like my son is a statistic? Why aren't they out there doing the kind of investigation they do when somebody's car gets burglarized in that other community? Right? So it's a complicated subject. But the one thing I do know is we want to make sure that we are everywhere and always that we are where people are making decisions about our lives and our communities and making decisions about our liberty and the decisions that have incredible consequence. So there you are.
Congresswoman?
So you've heard the history and the experience. I want you to always think about having the senator in the White House appointing the next AG who will have the ability, that department, to have transparency
Yes.
and compassion and to have structure and accountability. That's what she brings to our country.
Yes.
And actually, if I might, Congresswoman, and I just can't thank you enough. Brenda Lawrence from Michigan is a powerhouse in Washington, D.C.
Yes.
I've seen her in rooms where there are cameras. I've seen her in rooms where there are no cameras. And she truly is a national leader. Think of her as your Congresswoman, as well as meaning she is just representing all of us in the United States Congress. And I'm so honored that you are here and to have your support. And so, right, listen, I know the system. And so when I talk about my plan for reform of the system, this is one of my reasons for running for president. And it includes what we need to do to end mass incarceration, which is about sentencing reform, what we need to do around expungement of records, what we need to do around restoring voting rights among those who have been incarcerated, what we need to do around for legalizing marijuana, what we need to do to say that police and prosecutors need to be held accountable. You know, a lot of people, when we talk about law enforcement accountability, only talk about police. I'm really clear. Prosecutors also need to be held accountable. Right. So please visit my website for all the details, kamalaharris.org. But what you will see is that I will, as president, give the Department of Justice explicit, meaning specific authority to not only investigate police departments for patterns and practice of abuse, but also to give them explicit authority to investigate prosecutors' offices. The other piece is this. You know, it was just the anniversary, we commemorated the killing of Tamir Rice.
Yes.
Well, one of the things that we know about excessive force is that a lot of these cases don't go anywhere.
Right.
And the reason is that when there is a prosecution of those cases of excessive force and unlawful killing by a police officer, the standard, I'm going to get into some detail now, so bear with me. The standard for the court is to ask, the current standard, was it reasonable that that person was shot and killed? Under the circumstances, was it reasonable to have pulled the trigger? Right? Now, we know that in most cases, you can find some reason for just about everything, right? I'm going to change the standard to say, was it necessary?
Yes.
Which is going to make a huge difference.
Huge difference.
Now, see, how do I know that? Because I've been in the system to know what is needed. And I'm just going to say something, because we're at 10, almost 11 months into this campaign. You look at that debate stage, there are people on that debate stage that wrote the crime bill, that voted for the crime bill, that have never had any language about reforming this system until they decided to run for president. So, you know, I've been working on this my entire life.
Yes.
And there you are.
There you are. There you are. In partnering with Higher Heights, we know that women are very important to our politics, to our communities, to our churches. What is it and why is it that black women must be a part of this election? How important are they? Because I believe if women, just black women in the state of South Carolina said that this woman was the one, it would happen.
Yeah.
It would happen.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of women who don't feel like their vote matters.
Yeah.
We spoke to a lot of women today who said, oh yeah, we're registered, but people just don't choose to vote. Can somebody speak to the role and why black women must organize, strategize, and get out their vote?
So the building blocks to a winning coalition, particularly in the Democratic Party, are black women, right? But you can't harness power you don't know you have.
Thank
and
you.
An average American doesn't think we have your voting matters, and black women don't know that.
Right.
Now, people woke up on December 13th, 2017, and all of a sudden was, oh, black women decide elections in Alabama. It is something that we've known. It wasn't, we came out and we showed up and showed out in 2008 for President Obama, and we came back out and showed up and showed out in 2012. But we have steadily voted. I mean, we made records in 2008 and 2012, but we've been the building blocks to winning coalition. That is why they're trying to take our votes away.
Yes.
Right? So we may not know our power, but there are some people that know our power. And what I love about this election cycle and what I love about this evening is that oftentimes black women's votes are taken for granted.
Yes.
Right? You get that call 15 days before the election, like, you coming out? We are demanding our return on our voting investment in this election cycle. And it's in the forms of policies that affect black women, our families, our communities, our nations, and frankly, it is us demanding our seats at decision-making tables.
Yes.
So black women decide elections. We can decide that we're going to elect black women up and down the ballot. The other piece is we have to ensure that we have these types of conversations. As I mentioned, most times people are knocking on doors, making a phone call 15 days out. I appreciate that Senator Harris we were saying this, that black women want candidates to come in and have a cup of tea. So she is having a virtual cup of tea with us this evening.
Yes.
And she's doing that in other parts of this country. And it may be on the ground or virtually. And we need to be we are pragmatic voters, black women. We are informed. And when we take actions, we don't go to the polls alone. We bring our house, our block, our church, and our sorority.
Yes.
And that is what we need to do leading into the primaries this winter. And that's what we're going to need to do to galvanize in November. And so we may be, you may already be on Team Harris. You may be here wanting to hear a little more. Hope you're leaving on Team Harris. But we're dating our candidates this cycle because we actually have a lot of folk to date. And we need to be able to ask those questions. So be engaged and ask those questions so that when you are able to talk to your house, your neighbors, at the water coolers, you can have an informed decision of who is the candidate that can move this country forward. And we think, obviously, you should be joining Team Harris.
Yes.
It is important for you to reflect on history so that you can have a clear understanding of the road we need to travel. Women, we've only had the right to vote 100 years in this country. When there was a time in this country where women were not allowed to own property in their name, they were not allowed to vote. They were not allowed to have choices about their health care and their reproductive health. So take this is the 400th year that the first slave was brought to this country. And to enslave a people, they were denied the right to vote. They were denied education. They were denied the right to own property. So think about after slavery, then there was Jim Crow. What was left over from slavery? Oh, you're a free man and woman, but you can't vote. And if you want to vote, you got to see how many marbles are in the jar, or you have to pay. You are not equal when it comes to voting. How powerful is voting for women and for African Americans in this country?
Yes.
How powerful is it? We, every last one of us sitting in this room, are the dreams and the hopes of women and slaves in this country, that one day you would have the right to vote, that one day you would have that opportunity to have the freedom and the right. How dare anyone in this room not exercise that right?
Yes.
It's a disrespect to our history. It's a disrespect to those who died and fought for us. Those women who chained themselves to the fence and marched, and those black slaves who were brought here who died so we can have that right. Now, we are now being considered a powerful voice.
Yes.
And we only got started.
Yes.
We're only started. And this is about demanding what we need for our families. Because one thing black women do is that we vote for our families, our communities.
Yes.
You know, I might have a good job and benefits, but if my cousin or my mother or someone can't afford health care, I'm going to vote for the person that's going to take care of my family. That's why I'm sitting here today waiting to start my Thanksgiving dinner, because I know this is bigger than me. This is about my country. This is about my family. This is about my people. This is about my sisters all over this country. We need a leader. I don't think anyone here does not understand what leadership means now, seeing the examples that we currently have. We need a leader. Thank you.
Thank you. You know, my goodness. This is really a historic occasion, and we're all here experiencing this because this is a black woman's presidential town hall, and we are all here to experience this moment in history. And you know it's important. We know there's a lot on the line, and we know that there are a lot of people that stood on that stage with you in this last debate, and you spoke so powerfully, so brilliantly, so eloquently that they looked at you and they were like, we all saw it. We all saw it. So that should let all of us know they will be coming for her. But after this moment, we got your back. We got your back.
Sheryl, can I speak to that real quick?
Yes.
So I've had the opportunity to be at several of the debates. A couple of things, they're long for the candidates, but they're also long for the audience members because you got to get, it's 5 hours if you're going to it. And for me, every time I've been able to be there, it is something about the diversity of that stage that we've never seen. Race, ethnicity, age, sexual orientation, ideology. But for me, of course, I rock ideology. I rock Black Girl every day. Is to be able to see 55 years after Fannie Lou Hamer marched to the Democratic Convention to fight for us to have seats in the Democratic Party. Yes. To see Senator Harris stand there. 47 years after Shirley Chisholm, boldly ran for president. She is the possibilities that exist for my little godchild who was I saw her in Atlanta, who's 6 years old, who can imagine that there is no glass ceilings. So it is, we've shared this with you, it is showing the possibilities that continue to exist for the Stacey Abrams and the Kamala Harrises of our community.
But I was just leaning over to Sheryl. We all should, when we have some free time, look at what folks said about Shirley Chisholm when she was running. Because somebody pointed out to me, as a matter of history, that if you look at the things that they said about her candidacy, you will see similar things that they've been saying about ours. It's really interesting, which means that we have come far, but there is still so much more to do, because that half a century later, we're talking about this. So I stand on Shirley Chisholm's shoulders with great pride and a profound sense of responsibility. But I also do know that's why this is so important, because this is so much bigger than me. I know that. And my sister and my family can tell you that weighing all of the positives and the negatives of running for president, and I got into this clear-eyed, didn't know that it would turn out that we were going to be one of the #1 targets of the Russian bots, as it has turned out. Didn't factor that in, but factored a lot in. And one of the things on the side of the ledger that ultimately put me into the decision of doing this was knowing that our babies would see something on that stage that they identify with. So they could go to school the next day and say, well, I got my candidate too.
That's right.
Right?
Yes.
I got my candidate
Exactly
too.
right.
And, you know, and obviously everybody is a thinking person and gonna make their decisions based, you know, on so much more than race and gender. But there is something to be said. You know, my mother had many sayings, and one of them she'd say, you know, Kamala, you may be the first to do many things. Make sure you're not the last.
Ooh.
That's right.
Right?
Make sure you are not the last.
Right.
Now, I know that you've heard a lot up here, and some of you out there have questions, and we want to give you the opportunity to ask those questions so that you can get some answers. And I'm very happy that they're still having to put chairs in the room because this room is going to be filled to capacity and overflowing. Thank you very much. So, questions. If just raise your hand, the questions. Ah, there's a question right there. This woman right here in the blue. Okay, this white woman right here in the blue. The white woman with the white hair. There you go. Here we go. Here's your mic.
Hey, thanks for coming back to South Carolina.
Of course, it's good to be back.
I've talked to you before
Yes.
and always appreciate you.
Thank you.
So when you are president,
Yes.
will you order your Justice Department and your Attorney General to investigate Chevron and Shell companies for their part in and their damage to our planet in this climate crisis?
So thank you for that. And again, I will tell you what I've done, not just what I'm going to do.
Hey.
So I was elected district attorney of San Francisco in 2003. And very shortly thereafter, I addressed the fact that there's a community there called Bayview Hunters Point that is an African-American community with an annual household income of about $15,000. And by no coincidence, had become a dumping ground. And so the children, yes, literally. So the children of that community, of course, had health issues. And so I created one of the first of a DA's office's environmental justice unit. Back then, focused on saying that I know that you are dumping. You think of this community as having no power. Everything is telling the community, oh, this is just going to happen and nobody cares. And I said, no, we're going to go after this because you know what? White-collar crime, I'm so sick of that. I'm going to tell you something. Here's the thing.
Yes.
No, because, you know, look, that justice is on the ballot in 2020. And one of the things about the injustices is you've got young black and brown men who are being incarcerated and designated felons for life for low-level offenses. Meanwhile, these white-collar criminals are getting off with a handshake. Justice is on the ballot. A lot of the work I did, back to your earlier question, was focused on white-collar crime, including that, including corruption. I prosecuted a sitting member of the Board of Supervisors. I am not playing. I am not playing. That's why I say very clear-eyed and very clear, it's not just rhetoric for me, that justice is on the ballot when we have a criminal living in the White House.
Yes.
I know what I'm talking about. So way back, I created an environmental justice unit focused on what I knew to be happening in the city and county there where I was. When I became Attorney General of California running the Department of Justice, I took on the big oil companies and I won. And people would say, oh, that'll be the end of your career, taking on the big banks, the big oil companies, pharmaceutical companies. But you just have to have the courage to do that, to know it can be done. And so I'm running for president to say, yes, let's deal with this. And in particular, this issue of this environmental crisis. This is a climate crisis. You know that here in South Carolina, where we've got babies drinking toxic water, in so many states in the South generally where people got sewage in their backyards, right? This is real. With the levees breaking, because literally it is across the board. So my plan, and again, it's very detailed, but it includes, one, investing in what we need to do around renewable energies, and I have a specific focus on what we need to do around communities of color to make sure that we are putting the money into those communities, around the jobs that are necessary to build up the infrastructure. It is also about saying that for my plan, it's not going to be about then coming to the communities later and saying, you know what, we're going to give an impact statement. We're going to tell you what we've done to you. No, that's not my plan. My plan is you will be at the table to say what you want done in your communities. And empower the local leaders who know and are on the ground. Power the local communities around what needs to be done and how it needs to be done. And then also going after the bad actors, which means that I'm saying about these big oil companies and these fossil fuel companies, look, you should be really prepared to look at a serious fine or be charged with a crime. Because here's the thing. These big oil companies and these fossil fuel companies have been making so much money and profiting off of this pollution. And who are the most vulnerable to when we're talking about polluted air and water? It's our communities. It's poor people, it's communities of color. And not unlike the tobacco companies that for years knew, because they'd done the research, they knew the harm that their product was causing, but they were making so much money that they kept that secret. Same thing with these big oil companies. And they need to pay the price. So yes is the answer. Yeah.
Yes is the answer. Question.
Hello. I'm one of those black women you talked about on the debate stage who is caring for extended family. I'm one of those black women who, the fastest growing, who are actually creating businesses I run to. Talk a bit about your economic justice plan and how that would help me support my extended family and grow my businesses.
Yes. And will you say the name of your businesses? Oh. This is a good girl. This is a commercial. Come on.
Oh.
Say it. What are the name of your business? Say it. They got national press here.
I run a consulting firm and also a content radio show teaching civics.
What is your name? What is your name? So we can look you up.
My name is L. Joy Williams.
Fantastic.
Hey, L. Joy Williams.
That's wonderful. Got to market your stuff.
Shameless plug for all the teachers in the room. Shameless plug. Teachers.
Yes. Who works 2 and 3 jobs. So a number of things. Part of what Ms. Williams is referring to is I talked on the debate stage about what we need to do around paid family leave. And what we know is that, so many of these systems are based on a really old model, but not an old model for black women. It's always been the case that we worked, right? My mother worked. We would always come home from school before she came home from work. We were blessed to. We grew up for my formative years in an apartment on top of a nursery school, and the nursery school was run by our second mother, Miss Regina Shelton from Louisiana, and so she would actually take care of us until my mother came home from work. Right. In fact, and I used to work at the nursery school, in high school and college, so that's why I've always worked on children's issues. But that's not the case for so many families today, that you have that. I grew up in a neighborhood and in a community where the children of the community were the children of the community, right? I mean, you did something down the street. By the time you got home, your mama knew about it, right? And so, understanding that working women like you are also, the reality is that women are having their babies later. No longer, maybe right out of high school or college, right? In their 30s, sometimes in their 40s, which means the reality of it, because I'm all about being real, part of what I say about how we're going to win is we need to be focused on the future. We need to look at the fact that the solutions of yesterday will not deal with the problems of tomorrow. We got to be present and deal with the problems of tomorrow, looking forward. That means recognizing working women today in America are often taking care of young children and taking care of their parents. And so that means often leaving work a lot to take care of those babies and to take care of their parents. And for most women, that means if you get family leave, often it is not paid family leave. So my plan is for 6 months of paid family leave, and I've done the numbers. Thank you. I've worked out the numbers because you see, this prevents that woman from actually having to leave the workforce. And we all benefit from her being in the workforce, economically, not to mention what is for the best interest of the health and well-being. So that's part of what we're talking about that I talked about on the debate stage. But my economic plan is much bigger than that. It includes that. It includes that no family should pay more, or individual should pay more than 7% of their income in child care. Because here in South Carolina, you know, and everywhere, child care is often more expensive than college tuition, because the reality is that the cost of living has exceeded what have been wages in America. So wages have not kept up with the cost of living. My economic plan also includes this, and it's about home ownership. Okay, quick history reminder. And I'm not going to even go back as far as to the fact that we didn't get 40 acres and a mule. I'm not going to even go back that far. I'm going to go to World War II. World War II, the greatest generation. Thousands of people fought in that war. Our United States government said to them when they came back, you are the greatest generation. We are going to invest in you, and around you we are going to build a middle class and put federal dollars into helping you buy homes as one of the smartest ways to uplift the economic status of entire communities in society. Well, guess who didn't get that? Black service members. So when there was this infusion, right, of all this capital into certain families, there was none in others. So it created a real disparity. Then you're talking about decades of redlining. When black families were excluded from buying homes in those communities where that home would see a great appreciation of value. Then let's talk about what we mentioned earlier, the foreclosure crisis. So targeted loans, right, that were predatory, and then we saw the foreclosures. All of that led to, and other factors, the fact that black families own 1/10 of the wealth of other families in America today. So my plan is that I understand the significance of home ownership. I mean, our mother, she finally was able to buy a home when I was in high school, late in high school. And I remember how that felt to her and us, right? And it's about your place, and it's also about intergenerational wealth. Because here's the thing. When your son then says, Mom, I want to go to Howard University, shameless plug.
Go Bison.
Okay, or South Carolina State.
Or Benedict
Or
College.
Benedict, what am I saying? Or Benedict, of course, what am I saying? Oh, forgive me. Oh, forgive me. Of course, Benedict College. And you can say, honey, you don't have to take out that loan from that private service provider that's going to charge so much interest. I'll take some equity out the home to help you with tuition. Right? Or maybe your daughter says, I want to start a small business. And you say, you don't have to take out a loan. I'm going to take equity out of the house to help you start that small business. Intergenerational wealth. So my plan is to put $100 billion into families that live in historically redlined communities and those who live in federally subsidized housing to give grants to help with down payment and closing costs for home ownership.
Yes.
But it doesn't stop there. There's a lot more to it, including this, which is a really important point, and you know this as a business person. Access to capital. So we know that black businesses, small businesses, have always been part of the economic lifeblood of our neighborhoods, right? Because it's where we go to shop. It is our business leaders are civic leaders. They are role models. They are mentors. They employ locally. Okay. So access to capital. Well, a lot of that is based on credit scores. So let's talk about credit scores for a moment. Credit scores are supposed to measure, are you financially responsible? You know, so essentially, are you a good bet? If I put my money down on you, are you going to pay me back? Well, the thing about credit scores is the thing they measure assumes you already have money. How many credit cards do you have, and have you paid them on time? Well, ain't nobody giving you a credit card unless you got some money. Or your mortgage, are you paying that on time? We'll see earlier discussion. So I'm saying, if it's supposed to measure are you responsible with money, then we should also ask, do you pay your phone bill on time? Do you pay your utility bill on time? Do you pay your rent on time? So I'm talking about also expanding how we are looking at qualifying for access to capital. Right?
Yes.
Not to mention what we need to do to invest in our small businesses, and so there's a $12 billion piece of my plan that also applies to that. So thank you for that question, and congratulations on your work. Thank you.
We have our last question here. I didn't forget you. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, Senator Harris.
Good evening. Good evening.
And welcome back to the Palmetto State.
Yes.
My name is Bridget Miller-DeLine, and I am the chair of the South Carolina Democratic Party Single Parent Caucus, founder and CEO of Family Empowerment Program, a faith-based nonprofit organization, and also principal owner of a little small international Montessori school. I have lots of concerns regarding the news that's out there about missing Black people, particularly Black women and our little girls. As President of the United States, what would you do to attack this major problem?
Yes. It's real.
Thank you. It is.
It's real. It is real. It is real. So a large part of my career, I focused on, it's an uncomfortable topic, but it's real. Child sexual assault, and the work that I shared with you earlier that I did around what people would call teenage prostitutes, but what I said should be called sexually exploited youth, was born out of my knowledge about exactly what you're talking about. So one area of focus for me that is really one of the reasons I'm running for president is about our children who are in the system, with a particular emphasis on foster care. Because there are so many of our children who are just so vulnerable to predators. And, we have to check a society that also looks at our children and doesn't expect much from them, and therefore does not really value them, and then overlooks and dismisses them when they are missing, physically or otherwise missing, meaning not being present, right? Associated with this issue is an area I've worked on for years, which is undiagnosed and untreated childhood trauma, which is that so many of our babies are growing up in poverty. Let's be clear, poverty is trauma-inducing. Or growing up in a community where there is violence, which is also trauma-inducing. And if a child is growing up where the family that is raising them wants to protect them and teaches them, sweetheart, when the bullets start flying, jump in the tub. When the child has learned at a very young age the protocol for attending a funeral of somebody who was under the age of 25 when they were shot and killed, we've got a serious issue before us that we've got to deal with. And so a large part of my focus on health care, and I have a Medicare for All plan, which is very different from some of the folks on that stage. I'm not trying to get rid of the insurance industry. I'm saying, look, the insurance industry got to stop paying copays and stop charging copays and deductibles, but I'm not going to take away your choice between a private plan or a public plan. But my focus on health care also has a specific emphasis on the fact that I'm tired of people thinking healthcare just starts from the neck down.
Yes.
Because we got to focus on the need for healthcare from the neck up.
Thank you.
And bring that out of the shadows. Because so many people that we know they're silently suffering.
That's right.
You know, if you have a broken arm, people say, well, let me get you a cast. But we are not treating these things that lead to all kinds of predictable outcomes.
Yes.
And so I associate the concern you have about our missing children and girls with a lot of these other issues. But it also is about this. And I'm clear about this. One of the most powerful tools in the hands of the President of the United States is when she will hold this microphone.
Ah.
Seriously. And with that comes an incredible power and ability to help inform perception about a number of things, including who that little girl is. And what she can be if people see her capacity and know her to be who she is and to know her value and to know her beauty and to know how much dignity that she was born deserving to have. Because we know our babies are born beautiful and smart and with limitless capacity.
Yes.
But then something happens in our country. Come on now, let's talk truth.
Yes.
Something happens that sends signals that tell them or try to tell them otherwise. My mother would say, and I often say to, I mentor so many people, I say, don't you ever let anybody tell you special who's not a family member. Because here's the thing. There's something about that in a way is basically trying to suggest to you, oh, you're unique. Which is another way of trying to tell you, oh, you're the only one like you. Which is another way of trying to tell you, you alone. No, we come with people. There are lots of us.
Yes.
There are a whole lot of us. Right? So, and I guess that gets to the point of why we're here together.
Yes, it does.
This evening, which is that we do know our power. But we know our power has never been just given to us. We claim it. We claim it, and we take it. And we use it always in the most productive and best ways.
Yes, we do.
Yes, we do.
Yes, we do. Before we close, you know, I see you got your sorors out here, but you got two deltas to each side of you.
I love my delta sisters.
Yes. Okay.
I love my delta sisters.
I see you pink and green out there. Come on now. Put that pinky up now. There you go. I hear you.
We got some Zetas, I'm sure, too.
Say what?
Zetas.
The Zetas are here?
Yes.
All right, Zetas. All right now. Yes, Zetas. Okay, for those of you who don't know, this is a black woman's
sorority
weekend, and we are talking about the sororities. Now, you see all this crimson here, Crimson and Cream Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. You see the pinkett green.
Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated.
You have it. You've got the blue and the white. Those are the Zetas.
Phi Beta.
Who else is? And who else?
Sigma
Zeta
Gamma
Phi
Rho.
Beta.
Sigma
The
Gamma
Sigma
Rho.
Gamma Rho. Oh, the Zetas. Oh, excuse me. Yes, there you are. Yes, speak up, the white girl. Go on, girl. Tell us. Show us. Yes, 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 yes. We want to thank all of you for joining us here this evening. And before we close, we want to give all of our women some closing remarks. So please.
This is home. This is South Carolina, right? And so I'm a history teacher. I teach government, but I do history too. So I want to remind you of our history in this state. So a couple of days ago, I was going through my stuff, and I found an old blog that I wrote for Linda Kettner in 2008, and she had asked me to write something for her, blah, 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 and I wrote it. And it was so full of so much hope and optimism, and it was beautiful. And it wasn't beautiful because I wrote it. It was just beautiful because of the time period, and it was about what I wanted to see after the election, which in 2008 happened to be November the 4th, 2008, right? So fast forward, it was 2016. Just knew Hillary was going to win. Watching the returns, and I watch it by myself because I don't get home late on election night till about midnight. So that's my ex-husband's birthday, so he keeps the kids that week because he knows I'm not home. So I was by myself in my apartment. I went and got the cheapest apartment I could find while I was building a house, and the walls were really thin. And so I'm watching these returns come back, and battleground state after battleground state, and it was very sad. But it was sad for me, but I had some Hispanic neighbors upstairs, and the walls were thin, so I heard things I probably shouldn't have heard, right? I heard my neighbor crying profusely and talking to her husband about their future. It was not something I should have heard, but I still think about it all the time. So, gather myself, go to work the next day, pick up my son from school. My son was 13 at the time. He does this political thing. He's around me all the time. And he looks at me and says, am I going to have to leave the country? And I'm like, what are you talking about? You know better. I've taught you better than this. And he goes, I heard some of my classmates say to my teacher, our Spanish teacher, that Trump was elected and they're sending her back. That was the first experience he had had like that. And so I felt like I had let a lot of people down in 2016, right? I felt that. I felt like my neighbors who didn't know what was going to happen, my son who lives in my house, questioning his right to be in the country he was born in. And so I promised myself, look, I don't have a lot of money, I don't have a lot of resources, but I have some courage. And with that courage, I was going to use it to make sure that I never woke up and had another moment like that ever again. And so South Carolina, I know right now, we've been here before. This isn't our first rodeo where people told us our dreams were fairy tales or where people told us this was impossible. But in 2008, when Barack Obama stood on the stage after New Hampshire and talked about a little girl from Dillon, he was talking about me. And so that galvanized a small rural community. And when he talked about Greenwood and he talked about Edith Childs, we learned that anything is possible. So I'm going to ask all of you today to, even though people are erasing us, to people who are saying our candidate shouldn't be on stage, the people who are saying she's down in the polls, you have the courage to vote anyway, donate anyway, show up anyway, find a neighbor anyway, go to church anyway, stand up for Kamala anyway, and on February the 29th, 2020,